G'day, it is the coach. Hope you are all praying in the name of Sotek. It is the coach here, and we are talking early edition Seraphon, and I'm joined by... First off, I love the background. I love that you have gone into a temple of Sotek and you have donned yourself with gold, with ivory, with the finest leather couches the old ones could leave you. It is Ridge from the Seasons of War, and I'm excited to learn how our space lizards, but also our jungle lizards, but just generally how Seraphon has handled third edition. But before we get into that, obviously you are some of Canada's finest. We won't tell Jordan that. But do you want to give a quick intro of who you are and some of the why? I mean, one, you're here because you're awesome, but who are you and what brings you to the party of Seraphon?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the compliment. This is Carly's doing, my partner. She likes a lot of gold, and I brought Kroak, and he hasn't been seeing the table very much, so figured I'd bring him out here and just a card of swords for some funds. But no, yeah. So my name's Ridge. I'm most of you, well, people that have seen Season of War have probably seen me. So yeah, Jordan started up a channel. It's been over a year now, so I've been doing bat reps. It's just absolutely so fun, so awesome to be doing. Jordan, he does so much work for the channel. It's just crazy how much work has been editing everything else. Yeah, just awesome to be here and talk to you about Seraphon. I've been playing Seraphon for I didn't play them in fantasy, but what happened, my friend's brother actually gifted me a lot of Lizardmen back in the fantasy days. So I played Skaven. I've played Skaven, since fantasy. So that was my kind of first true love, like my first army. But I got a lot of Seraphon early on. So I was playing them in before second edition when it was the slan and just summoning in the backfield and skinks running away, and and then this new book dropped and it was just absolutely bonkers. So and that's something I always say, like, oh, just to clarify, the Seraphon players that aren't the bandwagon jumpers that, when that new book came out, people kind of just all started playing. But yeah, there's not a more fun army, man. It's, so diverse. There's so many different models, so many different,
I jumped on this book just as an FYI. I jumped onto the space lizards, or more importantly, I actually jumped onto the dinosaurs. I am wearing my Seraphon shirt. I've got an old school Warhammer Fantasy shirt that's full of skinks with bows, and it was really interesting. Like when I saw that particular box set, this Broken Realms box set, I thought it was incredible value. I always thought that Seraphon would be a really cool hobby army, just to have a lot of fun, being able to at least play casually. And actually, that's the reason why I bought two of these boxes, because I wanted to have something casually that I could play on a Friday night. I just wanted to chill, drop the box and make a whole bunch of noise, but run around dinosaurs. Like I love the idea of Stegadons and Engine of the Gods and Bastiladons and Carnosaurs. And I thought that'd be a whole lot of fun. And I remember looking at the old battalions, and it locked me into salamanders. It locked me into like Croxigores and things that I didn't like, Razordons. I'm like, I don't want to do that. I just want to run around big dinosaurs for lols. But yeah. And then obviously Kroak's come around, and Kroak's had a change in Broken Realms and a great new model. And it's interesting now that the list that I was building around, heavy Stegadon and Engine of the Gods and Bastiladon and just that type of build is actually now the new hotness compared to what was happening only a couple of months ago, which was all about Fangs of Sotek and Skinks and Kroak and Balewinds and Astrolith Bearers. So it's interesting how the meta has definitely swung. And we'll unpack certainly some of the changes for third edition and how the two, I guess, Coalesce and Starborn are kind of coming out in your opinion. And I guess for anyone who's new to the show, this is not the definitive guide to Seraphon. We're not going to tell you that if you love, I don't know, Saurus Knights, that they're hot garbage and that makes it true in fact. It's just our observations in third edition. And as the meta evolves, as battle packs change, and who knows how long we play in Gur, as, new things come onto the table, obviously our lists will change. But yeah, just a very early thoughts around like what has been your observation so far coming from second edition to third edition with Seraphon.
Yeah, you pretty much hit it on the head with just Saurus Knights, anything. Like everyone wants to play their Saurus. I have 100 Saurus Warriors that, I haven't played. Luckily, we have a bat rep channel. So once in a while, when we're playing Night Han or we're playing Feck or, some of the other armies, I'll bust out the Saurus Warriors and things like that. But it's like you just said, it's just the book. The book is so diverse. When I first got into it, playing Seraphon and Skaven, they're two of the most diverse books. So you have so many different units, and in the new Seraphon book, so many of them are viable. Yeah, it's just crazy. Like you can play, you know, like you said, the new hotness, a lot of the dinos because they score battle tactics really well. You know, or you can still play your Dracothians or your Fangs of Sotek lists, and that's generally what I've played for the last, you know, year and a half to 2 years. Heavy Fangs of Sotek. But now I've been dabbling quite a bit into Dracothians as well. Even in AOS 2, Dracothian's Tail, you were seeing a lot of the Kroak and Slan and Astrolith Bear builds that were super magic dominant. Throwing in the whatever cheapest Stormcast wizard they can for the Comet for some more mortals. So I've seen that a lot in TTS, and you know I was playing tons of TTS last year because clearly with the pandemic we weren't playing in tournaments too much. So yeah, just playing lots of Fangs. But yeah, from two to three, I think the biggest change has been just the reinforcements. So because Skinks are now, you know, held to 30 packs instead of 40s, and then Salamanders as well. Like it was ridiculous that Salamanders could be in 3 packs, teleporting them around and shooting, you know, 12 shots at 2s and 3s -2 D3. Like it was just wild the amount of damage, and then charging them in, you know, with 3d6 charge, with +1 to charge, with it's crazy.
Well, my last tournament game against Seraphon was, and you're going to laugh at this, it was 150 Skinks.
Yeah,
it was 4 blocks of 20, and then I think it was 2 or 3 units of Chameleon Skinks. Then obviously the Skink heroes and Kroak, and like looking at that build. Like one, it was so oppressive for my little Gargants running up the table, just getting mortal wound shot, and then like landlock with spells. And there's a whole bunch of things. But obviously, when I played Seraphon and against Seraphon, you know, I seen Lockie McLean in the chat here. He's obviously a really good Seraphon player, and a lot of the Seraphon lists. Oh, he's great. He won quite a large tournament that I was at not too long ago when we could play. And one of the cool things is that you would see very similar builds. Like it was always, you know, Kroak, Balewind, Ashlith Bearer, Skinks protecting the Saurus Guard to bounce off the mortal wounds. And as an opponent, you quickly learnt how to counter that if you could, or you try to build around it. You do X and Y and Z, etc., etc. I feel like now that build is still there if you really want to go down to it, but there's now a heavy incentive that you can go down the dinosaur build. You don't have to go Fangs of Sotek just to get the most competitive. I feel like at the time there was Fangs up here and then everyone else was kind of here. Now it's very much you've got multiple builds. And I just want to shout out Poet as well, who donated some dollars to the chat. Thank you very much, much appreciated. But would you agree with that? Do you think that there is now more builds competitively compared to what you saw in second ed?
100%. So in second ed, people were still playing Thunder Lizards. It was still a good viable army. Back then, it was you're running 2 Bastiladons, double shooting them. You know, a lot of rules have changed to 3, but people were still doing really well in a lot of like Hammer Time tournaments, and there was multiple different TTS tournaments that happened. Pask ran a bunch of them. The Butchers ones, like they were doing really well. But it was just Fangs was just so oppressive because Kroak could just Balewind hop 15 inches, whatever, unbind it, recast it, and just get anywhere he wants. And then 22-inch mortal everything off of the board. So it was
you would get rid of all of those support heroes. You would have those big blocks of Skinks that would just like absolutely stop you from touching any of those support heroes. And for a lot of armies, they didn't have the tools to handle that. And you're right, like, you know, people were still running Thunder Lizards, and there was still some really good lists. But when you compared like just the levels, there was one was just like, completely different.
Yeah, and I remember not a lot of people, well, some people would run the Camo Skinks as well. So that's one thing that's very much changed for me is I still will throw like a 5-pack in here or there, but my competitive list at the end of 2 actually was, which the heroes are pretty much the same for everyone who played them. It's Kroak, Astrolith, Skink Priest, Skink Star Priest, and then you're going to go 10 Skinks, 40 Skinks, and then if you want to add more Skinks, usually you're having 1 3-pack of Sallies, and then 20 Camos. And then your 3 end, so your Balewind, Bound Geminids. And that's pretty much what I ran at the end of it. So not a lot of people ran the 20 camos because just Skinks were just cheaper and you could just do it. But that allowed you to deep strike the 20 camos down, teleport your forward block, and then run and charge your 3 sallies all in one turn. Like, you know what I mean? It was, and then Kroak is absolutely destroying things with mortals. So yeah, it's just crazy, man.
And maybe let's unpack a little bit about why we think that, Fangs is still good. We've talked about it. It's still, you can still run Fangs. If you don't want to go dinos, that's cool. Do you, it's still competitive. But some of the things that have really leveled the playing field that I'm curious to unpack is, first off, we've had Kroak, who has got a new war scroll. It's got a new model. First off, that model is exceptional. But with that new model came new rules. And the new rules are not just like a minor tweak. It's not like Be'lakor, who kind of glowed up a little bit. This was a complete rewrite to the way that you handle wounds, the way you kill Kroak. Obviously, we've now had the Balewind Vortex disappear completely. Like, how have you found Kroak now in 3rd ed?
Yeah, I could talk about this one for a good half an hour probably. So I was always obviously a big fan of Kroak in 2. Even in 3, I did try. So we went to Grand Clash. It was the end of AOS 2, and Kragnos was in play. So the new Kroak was in. And I brought him. In my game 1, I played KO Vortex. And this was when you didn't get to pick where your pyramid was going. So I lost the roll off, so I didn't get the side of where my pyramid was. So I got the Vortex in a decent position into me, and then completely unloaded onto Kroak. I had him in cover, and before that he was allowed to get Lookout Sir, blah, blah, all that. And he ended up taking, at the end of the day, he took 9 wounds after the 5 Saurus Guard died, because I had 5 Saurus Guard. And then I rolled 3d6 and I rolled an 11. So the first tournament I ever played at him, game 1, I lost Kroak in turn 1 to a KO Zilfin Alpha. And then I ended up going 5-1. I ended up winning my next 5 games and going 5-1. But in that was when Seraphon was absolutely busted, like just crazy. But it just shows you, like Kroak, that tournament play, you don't want things that are to chance. Like, that's why you're going to see a lot of people, as me included, are running this land, because just, you can always roll the 3 6s. Like, I remember Jack from Rerolling Ones, I saw a tweet. He rolled 3 6s and took 2 wounds, and his Kroak died like right away, or his opponents, I can't remember. But it's just that unreliability is just not good for tournament play. I'm
having that, and I know this is not the Daughters of Cain show. It's my current passion. It's the army that I'm playing with, and I'm having a real tough time at the moment, and frustrations, because I am playing a lot of things like Witch Brew, like Mind Razor, like even just like the Blood Rights table. All of that stuff is high chance, especially like Mind Razor casts on 8. And there's a lot of magical supremacy out there, and even more unbinds, because priests can unbind. And I'm finding that what Daughters of Cain really enjoyed in 1st and 2nd edition, they've lost a lot with the Battle Tome rewrite. So coming back to Seraphon, yeah, absolutely, I can see that, the more risk that you take, and you are basically a destruction player when you start playing with risk, the greater the chance that you're right. Like Lord Kroak, while he's got 18 wounds, the way you calculate how you kill him is based on a weird table where you roll in every phase, not every turn. And, with an unlucky dice roll and you spike it, you can auto kill Kroak, and it can work in your favor. It means that Kroak can essentially be indestructible, or with the right amount of damage, you can pop a 400 character with 1 bad dice roll.
Yeah, without guard, it's 9.5 wounds, because as we know, 3d6, 10.5, their averages, there's 50% chance he's going to die without guard if you've taken 9 wounds. So, but all this being said, I still think he's definitely viable. Like, he's still able to be played. There's a few different ways. So you can either run 10 guard, and then use those guard and charge him right up the middle of the field. He has a couple amazing abilities. So a lot of the ones that people don't usually remember, or if they haven't played the army very much, is just the Arcane Vassal. So even that Skink Priest that's up 12 inches from him, or with 3, there's a lot of interesting things, because you can give the Arcane Tome to the Engine of the Gods or to the Skink Chief on Stegadon. They become a Skink Wizard. As long as they're within 12 of Kroak, he can cast Celestial Deliverance from them. So kind of a little cheeky thing with AOS 3 that they came out. They've always had the Troglodyte, so he's an Oracle. So if he's anywhere on the board, you can do Celestial Deliverance from him. But his points are just absolutely ridiculous. He went up a ton of points as well. So, running 10 guard, running 5 guard, he's now innately +2 to cast. So there's a bat rep with where Jordan and I played. He was running Techless, And I was just unbinding his. Because I was +3, right? The asterism gives +1, and then he's innate +2. So
Yeah.
he's casting 4 spells auto 10. I'm casting an 8, a 9, so that's an 11, a 12. You know what I mean? And I'm unbinding Teclis. So like there are some ways to use them for sure. But at Locky Ridge revealing our secrets, I love it.
That's really the secret sauce of this show. I find out all the little secrets and I get you all to share it with me. So I learn from you. I think equally, Seraphon players who are listening to this, you're hearing all the secret sauce, but equally for me, it's like, right, how do I beat this? And I think you're right with Kroak. I think you've got to look at Kroak very differently. It's not like, cool, I got a new model. How do I build around the way I've always played? You've got to really re-look at the way you used to play with it. And I think things like Aslith Bearer may not be as relevant today as it was for this particular Kroak, but I'm also seeing some people who have dropped Kroak and have just gone to the generic Slann. So, and I'm seeing some interesting play, and obviously we will go through one of Ridge's lists and explain a little bit about how this all works, you know, towards the half end of the show. But I think Kroak it's an interesting one. I know I've been thinking about it with Thunder Lizards and kind of moving him up because he doesn't need that bubble anymore. Moving him up with Stegadons and Carnosaurs and all the dinos, I thought they'd just be, I don't know, Jurassic Park 7.
Yeah, it's you still that it would be epic, and the model's amazing. And I took a while to paint it just because I wanted to bring it to the last AOS 2, like I said, where he was still amazing. But you know, he is, yeah, I don't know, he's still good. The Slann is with the Ashleth Bear. I think the question becomes with with Kroak, you definitely still want the Ashleth Bear because 16 inch is still quite a bit for Celestial Deliverance. So you're still able to project it from 16 inches. If something comes into your lines, you're still going to do a lot of mortals. When you're running the Slann, it's not necessarily that you need the Ashleth Bear because he's going to extend your range by 6 inches for, you know, Celestial Deliverance is already 24 inches. A lot of your other spells you're going to be able to get already. You're more going to see the Ashleth Bear with the Slann is if you're running Starborn because you get D3 extra Celestial Conjuration points and he gives the 6-up ward, which actually now has changed as well. So if you're running Source Guard, you can't take the ward save as well. So you know, probably a good change, more for, you know, Be'lakor passing off wounds and then getting a 5-up disgustingly resilient and then, you know, that type of stuff. But it affects Seraphon as well. But yeah.
And at the time, and that's probably a good call out, is at the time of this recording, we have just had the FAQ on the FAQ. So assuming we don't get an FAQ on the FAQ on the FAQ, we are on the FAQ.
Yeah.
So that's Kroak. I know you said you could talk for half an hour, and I would normally take you up on that. Let's put Kroak to the side. I think Kroak's changed. Kroak's still viable. Kroak's different. I think that's the key. Is that, you know, if you could still use it. It's just a different way you've got to use it, and the way you would traditionally build around Kroak may not be the right way to do it moving forward. Just as a call out.
Yeah,
you've had coherency changes, and you've already kind of alluded to this a little bit. So you've had coherency changes, so the way we've got to have models coherent, and I guess even it kind of ties in a little bit to the way we reinforce units and having a restriction on those reinforcements. Yeah. How was that changed or made your list building process different?
That's the biggest change. Like I said at the beginning, the coherency hasn't really affected us too much. You're always able to, if you're having a 10-pack of screen for skinks, you can just put triangles at the end, and if they're going to die, they're going to die anyways. It might affect, say, like pterodons, I guess, because you don't want to run 6 of them anymore because not getting them into combat, but they were never really great in combat.
You used to see blocks of, I was just thinking of Saurus warriors. Because in some of the builds, I've played a couple of Saurus Warrior builds where you've got those big blocks of 20 to 40, I think, at the time. And they're on 32s.
Yeah, so if you were running 40 Saurus Warriors, yeah, I did see at Grand Clash, there was like 2 blocks of 40 Saurus Warriors. But again, that's not the most competitive stuff. It's good because you can add save stack on them, in 2.
And reducing the damage as well was always like grinds my gears. I think you reduced rend as well. Used to grind my gears.
Back in the old book, it used to be, they used to have not get rend 1, but then they ended up just giving them +1 save. Then now they're at a 4-up save. But coherency with them, I guess it would affect if you were playing Saurus and that type of stuff. But what you were saying before is the big one. Reinforcements is what absolutely changed them. So like I said, you're not able to take 3 packs of Sallies anymore. You're only allowed 4 reinforcements. So often when I'm building lists, it's, you know, I'm going to be going, if you're going 30 skinks, that's 2 already. So then you're going to go, you know, a 2-pack of Sally, 2-pack of Sally. There you go. That's your reinforcements for most of your Fangs and Dracothian's Tail. When you're looking at your Thunder Lizards, you don't care about reinforcements. You're good. 4 is more than enough, especially if you're running Staggies as battle line, which Skinks are still amazing, as we'll talk about later, with the -1 damage, just having that many wounds. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of it with the reinforcements. It's mainly with them, but camos, I guess, too. Like I said, I used to run big camo blocks because they can deep strike. So you drop down 15 or 20 camos and then pair it with Comet. So you're doing, say, 2 or 3 mortal wounds from Comet, and then you drop down even a 5-pack or 10-pack of camos. Like, they can finish off heroes, all that. But now you don't want to use your reinforcement points on camos, because then you might as well just run them in 5s like MSUs.
Yeah, you might as well stick to those small units. I think that's probably the big challenge. Is you used to see a lot of big blocks, and in some of the lists that I played against, you'd have 2 big blocks at least, or even 3 big blocks, or at least double reinforcing, which we would now call it.
Yes.
It does hurt, obviously, the pterodons and those types of builds. Especially, you got to think about when you start going from, I think, is it 3 to 6. And start looking at the range of your weapons. I think some of them have only got 1-inch range, so you can't get all of the attacks in unless you start taking damage.
Yeah,
and I think the other so
yeah.
that's a big challenge, and maybe a disincentive of why you would go for 6 and you stick to 3.
Yeah.
But the other change that kind of works in your favor is that monsters have now gained 5 on the objective. So I think that was the challenge that I was having when I started to build my Thunder Lizards. Was at the time a Steggy was only worth 1. So I would have I'd have like a Sun's Army, but without the rules of getting more than 1 model, and you couldn't win on the objective really unless you went in and still had a block of Skinks or Saurus warriors or whatever it is.
Yep.
Has that helped you a lot, being able to have your monsters count as 5 or your multi-wound models counting as 2?
Oh, tremendously. Yeah, absolutely. And Thunder Lizards, I think it is a great change, because like you just said, a lot of models, that was a huge problem. They were really strong models. You wanted to use them, but at the end of the day, they count as 1 model. So how many times have you charged in, back in AOS 2, a Terrorgeist and killed 28 Skinks, and then you battle shock immune them?
I was just thinking Grizzlegore. I'm like, cool, yeah, you can double attack, but as long as I have enough bodies to block you off the objective, you'll never win. I've just got to hold that fence.
Yeah, so it's a great change, and for Seraphon with a lot of the Thunder Lizards for sure, because you're going to be running a lot of Stegadons, right? It's I don't know, I can't say anything better. It's awesome. I'm glad that it happened.
And then it kind of works well with the battle pack we're currently playing in, which was Gur. So it's obviously giving us more battle tactics. And I'll get your opinions on battle tactics with Seraphon in a minute. And I think some of the feedback that I was getting from the Discord when I was asking them, like, how have you found the Starborn as opposed to the Coalesced? One of them was saying that if you go too heavy on the Starborn traditional build, it makes battle tactics scoring a lot harder, they've just found. I don't know if you agree with that statement, but I can see that more aggressive style of Thunder Lizard and just Coalesced in general definitely works better for grand strategies and battle tactics over than the castle and then winning on objectives.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. So as you know, there are 3 or 4 that you kill a battle line with a monster, you kill the general with a monster, monsters take over. There's so many battle tactics now that you want a monster. So I think when it first came out, it was like, okay, or when 3 first launched, I was thinking in my head, everyone was all about if you don't have monsters, then or if you don't have any monsters, then you can't lose any points for them dying, right? Because that's everyone at first was like, I don't want to run monsters that are going to die, because you're just giving your opponent points. So that still, I think, is something to think about. So in most of my Draco, Tail, and Fangs lists, I'll include either the Skink Chief on Stegadon with the Amulet of Destiny, so being resilient, or I have a Phoenix, or there's a lot of different options that you can do, that you want like a resilient monster, so they're not getting a point for killing it, but you want that monster to be able to get broken ranks, or be able to get monsters takeover. I guess anything can get that. So but that's kind of where it's at now, and I think with some of these really good Thunder Lizard lists, it's scoring more battle tactics is better than losing. Say you lose 1 or 2 Stegadons, that's not as much of a point deficit as many as you're going to score from having those monsters. So scoring an extra one from these battle tactics, I think that's where you're seeing like Jack Armstrong, that list that he put up and won that the GT. It's like pretty much all Stegadons and then 2 sallies, 1 sally, and it's like he's probably scoring so many points extra. If a couple Stegadons die a turn, like who cares? You're scoring more points from the battle tactics of killing than you care about your monsters dying. So yeah.
And because you've got some strong casting, you've always got metamorphosis as well. So, and I found that's been really helpful, especially for some of those battle tactics where I've got to have 3 monsters or 2 monsters to activate the bonus VP. By using metamorphosis, especially having some consistency of getting +1, +2 or more, it really allows you to get that metamorphosis spell off. And if you don't want to go down the heavy Steggy, and I guess that's the message I don't want people to walk away with, that you've got to go down the Thunder Lizard. It's just what we're finding is different compared to Fangs, because Fangs still has the spell ability. You can still bring in, I know when I was looking at my list and I was trying to think about, well, I've got this double box of the Broken Realms. Like, where do I expand out on? What does a Carnosaur do for me? The Troglodon really impressed me. I looked at that and went, okay, might be cooking with gas here. I really like this Troglodon doing some healing, having a Skink on there. Like, there was some good stuff in that Troglodon. But you've got ways to work around it if you don't want to go down super monster route.
Yeah, Gotrek. There you go. Put Metamorphosis on Gotrek, and you're gonna love every minute of it. That's I saw, actually, I think he's friends of Buckets of Vito Ropo or whatever. He did pretty well at the Florida Open, and he had Gotrek in his Thunder Lizard list. So that was a super cheeky. Well, Gotrek is like, we knew right away that he's in everywhere. He's everywhere. If you have an order army, you insert him and you're good. But having Starborn armies that can teleport around, and then putting the Ginger Midget just in the front and down the middle, and you can kind of teleport around, it's how are you not going to win? Like, I bought a Gotrek, just, I don't know, I keep telling myself I'm not going to play him, but when you're playing Archeons and Nagashes that are 2 up rerolling 1s and all this stuff, it's like some of these big events, it's no holds bar. You bring your big list, because it's other people aren't going to hold back. So
no, and that's probably one other call out I'd make there is how you're dealing with and I keep talking about the meta, right? For anyone who, like, what is the meta? It's just the environment. It's just where you play. When you go to a game store, there's a local meta, and some of your mates might own an Archaon, so you don't have to worry about that. That's not your local meta. But when you go to a tournament, I went to a tournament like 6 months ago, and out of 60 players, there was 10 Archaons. So, like, that was a very different meta to what I might play at my game store. But one thing that I'm noticing in 3rd edition at the moment is there's a lot of high saves. You're getting really super durable heroes that are on 3-up armor saves that can easily go to a 1-up to ignore Ren 2, because you can only ever have a +1 to your armor save at best. But you can really reduce the Ren, then they can heal, they can have wards. And even like last night, I played a game against, I think it was 2 or 3 units of Blood Knights. So again, they're a 3-up, can easily go up to a 2-up, super durable, and I need mortal wounds as opposed to high rend. How are you finding that with your boys?
Yeah, it's tough. Seraphon are one of the best armies. Vito's in the chat. Nice.
Yeah, Vito's in the chat.
Yeah. I remember watching him on TTS a bunch. Awesome player. He played a lot of Fangs as well. It's awesome. Sorry, where was I?
We were talking about armor saves and just like the high
gotcha.
At the moment, because I think that's one big thing, right? And why things like Skink still, and being able to do mortal wound shooting can be still very powerful, and I wouldn't leave them at home.
Yeah, so Seraphon are one of the best. This is where I was going. Yeah, Seraphon are one of the best armies for mortal wounds. So even in 2, they had, your Salamander's wound on hit rolls of 6, D through mortals. So good. Skink's wound rolls of 6 with the Serpent Staff, mortals. Chameleon Skinks drop down, mortals. They have a million ways to do a lot of mortals. The one thing that they don't really have great is a rend. So especially with a lot of these armies you're seeing with Thunder Lizards, is Stegadons, everything has 1 rend. Even the Carnosaur, like, it drives me absolutely ballistic that the Carnosaur can't get 2 rend on his claws and his mount attacks. There's an artifact that lets you add 1 rend of the Blade of Realities, but it's with the rules, it's just to the Saurus guy on top. So grinds my gears that
I really want a Carnosaur. Like, as a Jurassic Park fan, I just want a Carnosaur leading my Triceratops and my Velociraptors. I just want that Jurassic Park experience. Yes, I know that's not Seraphon models, but I want that experience. But I can't justify that Carnosaur. I was like, which is why I went the Troglodon kind of is what's leading me towards
This guy right
Yeah.
here. So his name's Dorfy. I don't know. That's what I call him on the channel. And I constantly, like, Jordan laughs at me all the time because through sometimes of my generalship, not getting him in, like, make him fly, and I'll try to get him into combat, and he'll just, the first like 3 games I think on the channel, he didn't even get into combat. So just hilarious that
I think the Carnosaur needs to go down to Marathi's shop and have a chat to see how Marathi got her Ren 2 back, and maybe the Carno gets a Ren 2. But back to your point around the mortals, and I was just thinking about, and I'm sure this has happened many times in your bat reps, unleash hell with the Skinks.
Yeah, well, more with the salamanders, but the Skinks, just because so I have Ran Fangs, and now that you're able to use Unleash Hell, so you can position your Sallies just kind of behind your Skinks or like near your Skinks. So if they do get charged, then you can parting shot with your Skinks and still Unleash Hell with your Salamanders. So awesome there, but the reason it's not as great with the Skinks is because they hit on 5s. So, if you're probably going to have Herald of the Old Ones from the Skink Priest, so they're going to be hitting on 4s, so it just puts it back to 5s. So in Dracothian's Tail, for instance, yes, Unleash Hell still works if you've got the Serpent Staff on them. You need the Mortals, or they're not doing a ton. I guess before too with the Ren thing, so I was going to go on to a point of Salamanders. So that's kind of your only source of having amazing mortal wounds and -2 rend. So Salamanders absolutely slap. Like, they went up 10 points in AOS 3, which is not very much for how good they are. And they also they hit in combat so well as well. Like, they're 4 attack shooting and then 3 in combat. If you're in Coalesce, then they're 4 in combat as well. So that's your big source of -2 rend, as well as mortal wounds. But you can run. So I have seen some lists run. You can run 4x2 Salamanders because that's all your reinforcement points.
Yeah, that would be
no Skinks, which is still a very, very good list, especially in Dracothian's Tail, where you can just drop all of those down, holy 18 of your Slan, which, as Lockie was saying, giving away all the tech, but no, everyone knows how Dracothian's Tail works. But yeah, Salamanders are stonks. They're definitely one of the good units in the book for sure, for Rend as well.
Yeah, and that's probably the challenge is, we've said this on the channel, and other people are talking about it. Rend 1 is still okay, but when you start facing these high armor saved, and then to be able to heal the characters, you've got to throw a high velocity of attacks, and I think that can be challenging with you. You've got more quality attacks. You've mentioned, the Sallies with Rend 2, but more importantly, you've got a whole bunch of mortals and being able to chip mortals through spells as well. We've been talking a lot about like some of the models that you think are working really well, and I've been impressed by a bunch of models in 3E. And when I'm looking at my lists, there are certain things that really stand out. I'm curious to know, like, is there any models that you think have really won or are worth considering in 3E
compared to 2?
Oh, just in general, like when I looked at it, right, like Steggies definitely have won. We've already talked about like Steggies are good. Is there any other models that maybe either people should consider that maybe they weren't included in 2, or ones that you've just played with in 3 and you're like, yep, cool, this is a close to an auto include model?
Yeah, so for sure, it's your same old friends of Skinks are still amazing. People talk about them only being in 30s. It's like, that's still 60 shots, and if you have the Stegadon to give +1 attack, that's around that, because you're not going to get all of them into combat. But still, Skinks are still amazing. So they're still probably your go-to in those Starborn types of lists. Salamanders, like we said. What was I going to say? The Bastiladons are still absolutely amazing. So definitely double shooting them in Thunder Lizards. Even like Saurus Knights are very good. They were very good in 2nd edition as well. So in Coalesce, they get +1 jaw attack. So that's to their guy up top plus the mount. So they're putting out 7 attacks a model. So you run 5 of them. That's 35 attacks. You give them the Serpent Staff. They're wounding on 6s to wound as an additional mortal as well. Plus, you can give them +1 to hit, or you give them the 6s to hit, gives an additional hit. There's so many ways that they can be good as well. Even Saurus Warriors are still really good. 4-up save. You give them +1 save. A block of 30 of them is going to be very resilient. You can also give them the same treatment as you give Skinks. They're just not as efficient at it. So you give them the 6 to wound as an additional mortal. You give them +1 to hit. They're a lot more resilient, but yeah, it's even like, so Pterodons are I love Pterodons in second edition too. I used to run a 6-pack. The Mortal Wounds is amazing. Another unit in Seraphon that does a bunch of Mortal Wounds. So they went up to 115, same as camos. And that was always my dilemma in 2 was, do I take 3 Pterodons? But no, why not? I would just take 5 Chameleon Skinks. They can just do more, more utility. That even just talks about chameleons. Like in my last game playing with Thunder Lizards, I was playing Jordan, and I just had 1 unit of 5 Chameleon Skinks, and they did more for me in that game than any of my dinos, because just having them up in the sky meant, it's not even just the mental breakdown that you're giving to your opponent. Just whenever you can teleport, or whenever you're in the back of your head that your opponent can drop down from you, you're playing a completely different game. You're screening, you're worrying about a lot of things. So just having even those 5 Chameleon Skinks, I just had waited, and then he moved up, and they got me a point, which got me the score 1, score 2, and then got me the score more. So it got me 2 points that round. So, like that's a huge shout for them as well.
Can be a great way to score that battle tactic that allows you to have 2 models in enemy territory. Boom. Or if you take down, or you take like Predator's Domain to kind of as your grand strategy, you can just teleport onto terrain pieces, and that could be one that you win as well. Quick question though, you play on.
I did that early. I used to take that Predator's Domain when you asked me about like having like certain ones that they're good at. So I'll tend to take the one of keeping wizards alive or keeping monsters and thunder lizards. But I used to take Predator's Domain like with Jordan, and it was just funny because after my first game of doing it, I was like, okay, never doing that one again. I don't want to keep track of.
It's the mental tax of now trying to work out like which pieces of terrain, and then also then like getting into the end of the game and having like a disagreement. It's like it's just not worth it.
Yeah.
But before we move on, just really quickly, I want to ask something that you mentioned earlier about the Saurus warriors. We talked about coherency and we talked about the 32 mil base. Do you think that's now an incentive to go the spears over the clubs just because of the 2-incher, or do you think it's just not worth reinforcing, or just like not even worry?
Yeah, I got a real good answer for this one. If you put the serpent staff on them, then you want to go with the spears because it's going to be 2-inch. They don't lose a lot of things when you get spears. Lose other things, but they lose 1 point of rend. So when you're going for mortals, anyways, then you maybe don't care about having the -1 rend. The swords with -1 rend are great, but if you can get way more attacks in, 2 attacks per model, and especially if you're going to give them say 6s explode on hit, or you're going to give them +1 to hit. Then you're going to, and say you have Hand of Glory on them, because one of the greatest spells in all of Age of Sigmar, it's reroll 1s to hit on any Seraphon unit. It's not Skink. So you give them that, then there are 3s rerolling 1s, and then 4s with 6s doing an additional mortal. So in 2-inch, you would go spears in that case all day, but if you're running them in 10s, as most every unit in the game, you're going to run the swords, or the ones, the same as clan rats, like small units.
Just know that
swords, and then big units you run the spears. It's
know that you're obviously the potential of getting all 10 of those Saurus warriors into combat because of coherency is just slim to none.
Yeah, with coherency too. Yeah, and I haven't played. Did I play? Oh no, I played.
That's what I was thinking, because the 32 mil basis means that you're going to have to. You can't string out. Obviously, your 25s allows you to string, so you're not trading. Yeah. And I guess that's a challenge when you start stacking up things like the powerful jaw attacks, which are only range 1. It just means that out of 10, you're probably getting in 6, 7 if you're lucky.
Yeah, they're garbage too. You don't care about the jaws with the Saurus. Like you might get their 5s and 4s, so you might get lucky if you're +1 to hit. You might put a couple through, but yeah.
I think when I was looking at some of the units, the Troglodon really stood out for me. I love the regeneration ability. I like the spitting attack. I like some of the synergies that I was seeing. The Bastiladon you mentioned earlier, the Stegi was great. The Engine of the God is just so good.
Awesome.
It's tough. It's killy. In a coalesced, it's the only way you can really summon. There's been some really cool. I'm seeing some good things that hopefully we'll see the table again. The Carnosaur, the Scarvedon Carnosaur, for me seemed like good value. Like it's from a points perspective, it's actually really good value. But I think, as we've talked as well, like the lack of rend, or the rend 1 is just it's more of a distraction than it is a real threat.
He can still be amazing. That's why I still always try him. You can still make him awesome. So Saurus have actually a lot of good command traits. So you can actually give him the command trait to reroll ones to hit. That's one of them, which is unbelievably good. And reroll ones to save is one of the other ones. So either of those are really good on him. But then you have to make him your general. And then in that case, you pretty much want to give him the Amulet of Destiny, because if not, he's going to go down like a bag of whatever. He's going to die very easily and slay the warlord. Like, that's just the easiest thing for your opponent to get. But you can still absolutely juice him up with +1 attacks from Prime War Beast. And if you go Thunder Lizards, and instead of taking the reroll ones to hit, if you have another way like an Azeroth, or you give him Hand of Glory, he can have the reroll ones to hit, and give him +2 attack, 1 attack from the constellation, so +1 to all of his attacks. He's got a 5 damage attack. Like, he can slap. Like, he can do some good damage. And Vito's saying, yeah, +2 attacks with exploding sixes. That's on his war scroll. That's actually just his mount weapon, though. But you can give him his own command ability that gives it to his mount. So yeah, Carnosaurs. There's no one more than me that wants to make the Carnosaurs great again. But give him a rend.
I think for me though, like when I'm building up a particular character, I'm building up more of my things like my Skink Priest on Steggy as opposed to the Carnosaur. I think that's probably if I wasn't taking that, then yeah, I would build around the Carno. But probably a good question from Drew that I don't probably have the answer just yet, because I've got both of them in my list. And that is, if I had to choose between the Engine of the God over a Skink Chad, which I imagine is the Skink Priest on Steggy, would you have a preference? Because I've got both in my list, so I love them both as my children.
Yeah, so this is a good plug for one of the best Seraphon guys. If none of you have heard of him, I know he's been on your channel. Caleb Hastings is the Seraphon guru. He talks about the Skink Chad, which is hilarious. He puts out a lot of good content. I don't know. Between the two, I would go the Saggy with Skink Chief. Depends on what you're running. If you're running a full Thunder Lizards list and you got a bunch of Stegadons, maybe the Engine will be better, because you can heal them up. If you have a Slan, you can always do the 3d6 for summoning. But the amount of damage that Skink Chief on Stegadon can put out is absolutely bazonkers. So there's some tech in there as well. Again, just Caleb Hastings put out one, I think it's his latest video about the Skink Chad on Stegadon, and you can get him +3 attacks to everything. So he can get the same 2 I just talked about with the Carnosaur. And then he can, where does he get his third one from? From his own command ability. So his own command ability gives him +1 attacks to a Skink unit in melee. So you can give him +3 attacks, and Prime War Beast actually gives him +1 attack to his mount. So his crew actually counts as his mount. So that actually gives him 1 more bow shot as well. So he can shoot 4 shots, 3s and 3s. So if you give him best day ever and auto attack, he's 4 shots with his bow, 2s and 2s, -1, 3 damage. And then you charge him in, does 3 up, does D3 mortals. And then he, you can do all sorts of buffs. Give him 6s to wound as an additional mortal. You give him +1 to hit from the Skink Priest, which is even better than doing auto attack, because it's for both shooting and both phases. You give him run and charge on a 3-up from the Skink Priest. If he has the Cloak of Feathers on, he's +4 move, -1 to hit, and flies. You just throw him down at whatever you want to kill, and he's gonna have. So he'll have eight stomps, and then 5/5/5 for the horns, which do 4 damage. All 2s and 2s.
It's massive. It's so that's super Chad there. And I just want to quickly say that you watch Warhammer Weekly this week, because you're the second person I've had in a row that's called their finest hour best day ever. So I'm going to have to send an invoice to Vince every time I have to clarify that, just in case anyone starts looking in their battle tome going, their finest day, where is his finest day? It's their finest hour. Like, that's the heroic action. It's Vince. Vince did it this week on Warhammer Weekly, and you're the second person I've spoken to since that episode that's called it. I'm not trying to actually use, just for clarity for people who might think.
I don't know who came up with it. It was like a long time ago.
Vince.
Yeah, it was like months ago, I think, or over a month that I heard it, and I've set it on the channel. And now the new game I always play with Jordan is I'll just randomly say a different phrase for it and just call it "Oh Bloody Sunday" and not laugh about it. You just got to play it casually. All right, yeah, I did "Oh Bloody Sunday" on the Carnosaur. He went in and killed. It's just so funny. But yeah.
Is there any, we talked a lot about some of the good stuff in there, and I think there's mostly good stuff. Is there things that maybe you wouldn't take? And we're going to get to your list very, very, very soon for the people who are playing at home. Is there any things that maybe you'd leave on the shelf at the moment? And maybe my first question is my good old friends, the Kroxigor. Is it time to bring them off the shelf onto the table, or are they still waiting for their time like the mighty Cygor?
Yeah, I couldn't even tell you. The Kroxigor are clearly not the best units. They can still, they can still do some damage. And the Moonhammer, I think it hits everything within 3, so against hordes, but you're not going to see much of that. But they're the coolest models ever. Like well, not them, GW, but there's a lot of different Lost Kingdom and like other people that make some amazing looking. I've seen some that are like these giant turtles with like huge hammers and axes. So there may be one that you're not going to see too much. I know people have them from back in the day when they used to run the Thunderquake, Thunderquake Starhouse. I know Jeremy Cooper, he always would use them in that Thunderquake. But if you played it back then you might use them. But other than that, they're probably on the shelf.
They just lack synergy. I think like from my days of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, they used to have synergize really well with Skinks. They don't have those keyword synergies, which is why I am not a fan of them. Oh, they're cool models, and I've played against them in a Thunder Lizard, and they did some real damage, but they just don't synergize. And I think we've already kind of called that the Ripperdactyls are a little bit tougher right now, or if you're going to take them, only take them in 3s as opposed to the 6s. Otherwise, you're going to lose a whole bunch of attacks.
No, you don't even take them. Those guys are more on the shelf than anything, because when they first came out, people were abusing them because their command ability, you could use a command ability and stack a zillion attacks on them. But it was one of those things where Games Workshop just didn't realize that. So as soon as that happened, people bought, like 9, 12, 15 Ripperdactyls, and then, oh my God, like this rule that we knew was going to be gone, like all of a sudden my Ripperdactyls suck. It's like, yeah, you had probably a good idea that was going to happen. Pterodons are, like I said, you don't see them that much, but they're still good. And that's with even like Razordons. Reminds me of, we went to Grand Clash in Quebec, and metas are always just different everywhere. So when we showed up from like Ontario, New Toronto, I was repping Sally's. I didn't use Razordons. We got there and there were like 4 or 5 lists that had like 2-3 packs of Razordons. And I was like, what is happening here? Like, they're another kind of one of those models that you don't really think about, because it's 2d6 shots, but it's from 18 inches. So you can give them some buffs. If they're within 6, you get a rend. If you charge the Razordons in, they can actually shoot as you charge them. Just d6 shots, but still at 1 rend. And then they actually hit hard in combat as well. So they're like the Salamanders, they're 3s and 3s, -1, -2, and just flat 2 damage. So even models like that, like in other armies, like in Seraphon, we're like, no, I don't want to Razordon, but it's like other armies, like that's a good unit. Like if you put that in Beast of Chaos or Gits or something like that, like they're like, give me those Razordons, like I'll take those. But yeah, there's a lot of other units like that are just they're definitely viable. And with the whole point of the Seraphon book and why it's so good is that it synergizes like amazing. I feel like I'm at like a sales pitch meeting where it's like synergy, that's what you want, like that's the key word, but that's what the lizards do in this the book is just everything just works so well.
Yeah, like I'm looking at just your the unit selections right now, and I'm looking through it, and obviously I'm looking at the battle tome and not the updated points, so I won't go into like points per model, but like I'm looking at this, and most of the things that are sitting there, I think are competitively viable. Whether you went the Coalesced or the Starborn, I think each of the model, with a couple of exceptions that we've kind of called out. The Saurus Knight one's an interesting one because it's always talked about the potential of having 70 attacks for a unit of 10. One, coherency rules are now kind of kicked in with the Saurus Knights, but 2, I've never actually seen anyone actually put the theory into practice and go in with those 70 attacks. I know people have talked about, boost up jaws from both the Mount and the Rider, but overall, I think, you're in a good spot mostly, which kind of leads us to the list. And just quickly for Mitch, who recently might have missed the conversation, I think the higher level conversation is that Kroak is still good. Kroak has changed. Kroak, you probably want to think about how you play with Kroak, because the way you used to play with old Kroak and new Kroak are different. Balewind's gone. That still means you can use your Athlete's Bearer, your Skink Priest and all that good stuff. That if you just plug and play War Scroll to War Scroll, it's not going to work the way that it used to. Is that kind of the high level summary?
Pretty much, yeah. He's still, he changed a bit. A lot of his skills are still very viable. Like just the +2 innately to cast and unbind is unbelievably good. His another small change that people don't really, didn't really see right away is his command ability, giving +1 save to against shooting and fly. It's actually, he gives it to D3 units instead of just 1. So I've used that in a couple battle reports, just, really good. And Arcane Vassal, like I think someone just said there, is just one of those ones that once you get reps in and you play a lot more, you start to remember those. That's one thing that I when I first started playing, I never remembered that I could cast from my Skink Star Priest or my, just the Star Priest, unless I was running the Star Seer. But it's just, so good. And it gets to the point where it's like, it's not, if you make sure you tell your opponent that, like, I am able to cast from this little skink wizard if I'm within 12 of him, and your opponent goes, okay, good to know. That'll be a moment where he's going to be closer to that skink priest. Try to stay outside of Kroak, but he might be in there. But if you're a good player, you're going to be like, tell him that.
Think about it.
But.
And to what Vito said as well, Kroak is certainly more of a utility now as opposed to the damage dealer. So that's why we mentioned building around him the way you used to may not be the most viable way. So it's still good value.
CP, I was just going to say, we haven't even mentioned it, but yeah, the guy generates CP on 3 dice on a 4+. That's just insane. Like, it's, especially in this edition where CP is just integral to be doing a lot of things. The Slan does it on 2, but him with doing it on 3 is, just so good.
Yeah, and it means you might not need to take second if you really want to go first, but you're avoiding, you're worried about having the extra CP for X, Y, or Z. And Tyler's already giving you some shite about buckets, about Be'lakor over Kroak. I mean, you had your show, Buckets. It's now the Seraphon show. It does give you the flexibility to be able to do things like, and my favorite command ability in all space and time is redeploy. So you now have a tool to redeploy. You can still do things like Unleash Hell. You can still spend the CP because you're generating so much in a Seraphon list. But talking about lists, here's one of many examples. And, we have some great lists out there that have already gone well in competitions. But this is the list that you have been playing around with. And I guess we just kind of put some of the theory into practice and understand how you're thinking about Seraphon. So this is the Thunder Lizard build. You've gone Beastmaster and the Triumph is inspired. You've got your Steggy on, so your Skink Chief on Steggy. It should be the other way around. Stegadon with Skink Chief.
The Skink Chad.
The Skink Chad, which is the general primal war beast. You've got Amulet of Destiny and the bow. I think that's I see a lot of discussion around, do you take the bow or the other weapon? And it's always the bow. It's always the bow. You don't take the flamethrower, you take the bow. The Engine of the Gods, you've got a Slan Star Master, you've got a Skink Priest, you've got another Star Master, Star Priest. You got 30 Skinks, Saurus Guard, Stegadon, Chameleon Skinks, the Steeledon, and you've got 2 core battalions. Interesting, I actually haven't seen this in list discussion just yet, having the command entourage along with battle regiment. So talk to me about some of the logic here.
Yeah, just we start with the battalions. This is one of the most common ones that at least we usually play with. You're either going to be, if you're not running the battle regiment and you have only 3 heroes and you can't fit it into a 1-drop, you can put a couple units outside and be a 2 or 3 drop, but you're going to see very commonly 4 drops. So that's where your battle regiment, and then you want that extra artifact. So you can also take Warlord, which would make you a 5-drop, and then you get a CP once per game. But this list generates CP pretty well. So it's better to have the 4-drop because you can, often, well, not often, but, I don't know, maybe 50% of the time, you're going to be able to choose who goes first.
I like it. Like I see a lot of like double battle regiment, or you see hunters. I think that's probably the other part, is that when I say I haven't seen this combination, I know it exists, but I think a lot of people, maybe especially now while it's new, everyone's going hunters, or a lot of people are going hunters. So
hunters would be great against this list, or these types of lists, because hunters is just it is an amazing battalion.
So you've got yourself the battle regiment to reduce your drops quite significantly, and then the command entourage to get you the extra artifact, as well as obviously that's brought in the extra three drops to fulfill that regiment, the battle battalion.
So yeah, pretty much you're taking Magnificent because you need that Amulet of Destiny. So like I said, on that Stegadon Skink Chief, the problem with Stegadons before GW decided to bring out a universal item that gives everything a 5+ ward, which is insane, that every single list has, they die. They're 10 wounds, they get +2 because they're in Thunder Lizards. If you have no mortal protection, imagine playing against Seraphon or against Bow Snakes or against Lumineth or against, anything that can do mortal wounds. Like, those Stegadons are going down.
And we had to do that as your opponent. We had to in order to handle your 1+ armor save Bastiladon. Like, that was the lesson you taught us, because we kept throwing attacks at you, and at the +1 armor save, you're just like, lol. So we went down the mortal route, but then unfortunately the Steggies and everyone else copped the damage, along with the Bastiladon.
Yeah, exactly. And it's honestly, it's not absolutely needed, especially in this edition. Because it is, well, I shouldn't say especially in this edition, because there's still a lot of damage. There is still a lot of mortals. But the Skink Chief on Stegadon, is just, like I was saying, is just such a good piece. And then the biggest thing about this entire army is especially in the meta now, is -1 damage is just bazonkers good. Against Archaon, Nagash, like any of these big units, it just pretty much shuts down some armies. Not completely, but like if you look at giants or ogres or orcs, or tons of these armies that you're gonna see at tournaments, -1 damage to them is so a kick in the balls. Like, it's crazy how good it is. But yeah, so I guess just going through the next part. So yeah, the Engine of the Gods, we didn't really talk much about him. So he's one of the ones that in the new FAQ, finally they actually gave him the priest keyword. So he is a priest, and I know
that was
everyone.
Big. That was big.
Yeah. Everyone talks about Curse like it's like the greatest thing of all time. Like, Curse is just such a trap. Like, I think we chatted about it before, but it's like,
I was going to say that, you and I were talking about this because I mentioned a little bit earlier in the show, and I won't talk too much about it, that my Daughters of Cain, I've been going down the Witch Elf build. I'm trying not to play snakes because I've got a list and I've got a theme, like a model range in mind. So I'm trying to avoid both snakes. And one of the challenges that I'm having in the meta right now, having a lot of 2-up and 3-up armor saves with ward, is that even when I went up against Gotrek and I charged in double-bladed Witch Elves, they were having like 3 attacks, 2 damage apiece, a high volume of Witch Elves that were re-rolling to hit because of their Hagnar. I still couldn't kill Gotrek in a single turn. Throwing all that stuff at Blood Knights just didn't kill the unit. So for me, one of the things that I was thinking about outside of going into bow snakes was Curse. And the challenge that I'm having, and you can tell me where you are at with Curse right now, is that you've got to be within 9 of the enemy, not the unit that you want to go in and charge, but the actual thing you want to curse. Things like teleporting means I've got to be outside of 9. So in my army, I can't mirror dance. You can't do any teleporting to get within range in the hero phase. And it feels like I'm playing for the double turn. And as a viable strategy to charge in a Gotrek, a Blood Knights, Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, Archaon, whatever, I don't think that's a viable strategy to pull off Curse. Now, 100%. You called it a trap. Talk to me where you're at with Curse.
Yeah, it's shit. That's where I'm at. No, it's
I had a big long speech and you're just like, yeah, shit.
It's shit, mate. It's no, people, when it first came out, it was all the big hotness, but the only time it's not shit. It can be very good, especially only on a few units. So Chaos War Shrine, Engine of the Gods. This is actually a good piece, because now your Engine of the Gods is going to probably be up near, the front of the line. So it's almost like a bit of a deterrent. So Archaon, or these big models that want to charge into your lines, now if they charge into you and they don't kill that Engine of the Gods, 50% of the time they're going to get cursed next turn by this Engine of the Gods. And you know what 30 skinks do really well? Shoot a zillion shots at that character and already have 6s to wound, do an additional mortal. So if they get 6s to hit, do an additional mortal, it's just crazy how much damage it can do. But again, people talked about it so much at the beginning of how great it was. I don't think it's good at all. Like, anytime anything's on a 4-up, it's something. The best way to put it for this list and for using it is, it's a nice thing to have on a unit that is already good and already heals your big monsters, already does D3 mortal wounds to 3 units within, or every unit within 12, already can summon you 10 Saurus warriors, already can on 3 6s make you have double your attack characteristics and reroll charges, which, spoiler alert, Jordan and I played a fun game earlier this week, and it's the first time I've ever rolled the 3 6s, which, listen to this, coach, this is fucked. So it used to be when you roll 3 6s on the Engine of the Gods, you just got another turn. It used to be it was
so I played at a tournament, and by the way, I mean quickly, I want to call out, I don't even know why, Ridge, I've even got you on the channel, because I could have summarized this whole tactic with re-rolling once Jack, who just said, why don't you shoot your Gotrek with 50 Sentinels? Like, why did we just talk for a whole hour? Jack has just dropped the bomb. But I actually played at a tournament, it was like 2016, even 17, right? And the table behind me was a gentleman by Chris Tott, and he triple turned his opponent by doing that. So he went bottom of the turn, got the free turn, and then won priority and went again. And it was like, I'm literally right behind him watching this unfold, and it was the weirdest stuff. And then Chris Todd again in like the Masters, like a year later, like stacked a whole bunch of CPs on the Carnosaur and did 72 damage from one attack. It was just, there was some weird stuff that used to happen that I'm glad has been reined in a little bit. A triple, people think like, you know, Sentinels are a feel bad. Imagine being triple turned.
Yeah, just go to the bar at that point. I would not even stay at the table. It's unbelievable. Yeah, man. And the old book, Starseer used to do. You used to be able to have dice, and you used to roll them, and then you'd have them in your hand, and then you could replace a die with them back in the day. It was, yeah, man. Some of the old rules were cool, but just ridiculous. But yeah, anyways, moving on. So yeah, so the engine, is awesome. So Curse is on there again.
Engine is great.
Yeah, like I said, it's more of just kind of there if it comes up. Then you never build a list for Curse ever. If you do, then you're doing it wrong.
I've been toying with it. I'm not building around Curse. I'm trying it because I'm just one way I'm trying to handle the high armor saves. And I think I'm going to try it on a chariot. And I think the Engine of the Gods, as opposed to like putting it on like a foot troop, isn't the right strategy. I think with a chariot or a buff piece, it might work. Autumn, what does an 18 do? Or for the rest of the turn, you can re-roll charge rolls for all Seraphon within 24, and then double the attacks.
Double attack characteristics. So that's what I did the other day. So your Stegadon's all double attacks, but then when you add attacks, it's after. So even your Skinks, though, they all have 1 attack, so it would be double 2, and then +1 if you have 15, blah blah. So it's still really, really good now, but it's what, 1 in 216 is the chance. So it's
like banking on an 18 on 3 dice is
For your dock situation, though, I think I got it figured out for you. It's called the bow snakes
and the Sentinels, right? Like, let's hope that she allies with the Lumineth as opposed to a spite against Sigmar.
Yeah.
So you got Curse. So Curse is good, but I think it's quite hard right now, unless I can find a way to increase the range of a prayer, which currently doesn't exist.
Yeah. So the next piece is the best piece in all of Seraphon, and that is the Skink Priest. He is the greatest model in AOS 2, in AOS 3, in AOS whatever you want, because he is 80 points, and the amount of utility this little guy does is crazy. So he's only got 4 wounds, so you do have to watch out for things sniping him or range mortals, range anything. But his command ability gives you +1 to hit, which in this edition is his Herald of the Old Ones for a CP gives +1 to hit until your next hero phase is stonks to the moon. It's the best on everything. So many good interactions. In this list with the Bastiladon, it's unbelievable, because if you do all-out attack with the Bastiladon, you then can't use Trove of the Old Ones to make it shoot again, because it's already used a CP in that phase. So,
and I was going to pause you there, because I just want to make that, just for anyone who doesn't connect the dots, one of the changes in 3rd edition is that a unit can only issue or receive 1 command per phase. So, and one of the challenges that I've been having in some of my lists is the command ability all might get issued in the hero phase or in the combat phase. So what this allows you to do, the Herald of the Old One, because you're issuing it in the hero phase, it still means you could use all that attack, all that defense in the combat phase or another combat phase command ability.
Yes, and with the Bastiladon, you can use Trove of the Old Ones and make it shoot again with +1 to hit. So that's with the Bastiladon, but other things as well, like you said, yeah, things especially that shoot and then charge. So you have one of the best things of that, which is the Stegadon with Skink Chief. You give him same thing, +1 to hit. He gets it for his bows, and then he gets it in combat. And then say you've taken 6 or 7 wounds, you can use Feral Roar, one of the new Guru abilities that lets you fight at top profile. So just like, I can't explain how amazing a +1 to hit till next hero phase command ability is.
And that also helps you with Unleash Hell, because if you were to Unleash Hell, you can't get a +1 to hit there at all.
Exactly.
But by getting a +1 to hit in the hero phase means that it carries over to the Unleash Hell. Yeah, so that's another great way to reduce that -1 to hit, +1 to hit, and a bit of a deterrent for your opponent.
Yes, another amazing example. You got it. And you know what? Another great thing that they can do in that situation, it's called one of the best spells I mentioned in the game earlier, Hand of Glory. So you give this a Hand of Glory to reroll 1s to hit until next hero phase, +1 to hit until next hero phase. You're getting Unleash Hell. You're already +1 to hit, and you're rerolling 1s on Unleash Hell. You're doing that in all phases. Like, it's those two things are just so good, and that's one of the reasons why I run the Star Priest or some type of Skink Wizard in this list or in these lists, because if you're not running 30 Skinks, you don't need the Star Priest. So it's pretty much like Marathi and the Bow Snakes. Marathi and the Bow Snakes, best band of 2021. Star Priest and the Skinks are like you keep those together, because the 6 to wound doing additional mortal is so good on the Skinks. So if you take out the Skinks from the list and you say you put in Salamanders, then you're going to take out the Star Priest. So you need some Skink Wizard to be able to have Hand of Glory. It's literally that good of a spell that you use the Star Seer, or you just bring the Star Priest in for the spell, and then you find something else to give that Serpent Staff to.
Yeah, and Elijah's also mentioned in the comments too as well, you could do that on Salamanders too, because Sallies have the Skink keyword, right? So it allows you to Unleash Hell with your Sallies without the penalty, because that's awesome. That's and as an opponent, that's a real deterrent, right? Because if I'm going to charge you, and that was even one of my challenges when I was playing against those 140 odd Skinks, in second edition. If I charge my Gargan and you've been chipping wounds at it already, and then I charge into a block of 40, like I'm gonna cop it, or I'm gonna buff up my Gargan and you're just gonna retreat. So and in this game now we've also got the redeploy, so that makes things a whole lot harder.
Was that in a tournament, or was it just like a pickup game when you played all?
Was
it Queer Next?
It was a gentleman called Chris Wilcox. So he's an old fantasy player. Literally 4 blocks of 40 Skinks, then had a couple of heroes, Slan, I think two or three units of it was just like, it was a nightmare, because my Gargants are just like slow and not doing anything. And then like I charge in, I get shot off. It was just like I couldn't win. And it was scorched earth as well. So like I got 4 objectives to defend with 4 models, like 6 models on the table. But
I just asked because I know I've played a guy named Queernex who was a very avid Seraphon player, and we chatted a ton, and he read a lot of the Skink, so I thought maybe it was him, but
no, it was not. But it's bad to hear that you got 2. But you got all your little heroes. You've got the Star Master, the Priest. The Priest is a great little model, and the Star Priest as well is really good support heroes.
Yeah, like I said, for Hand of Glory. So then, moving on. This is kind of the pick where, with this list and with a lot of my Thunder Lizard lists, am I going to bring 30 Skinks or am I not? That's kind of the question. Most people are bringing, at least 2 Stegadons. I know you as well probably are running 2 Stegadons as battle line, and then maybe a couple Salamanders instead of the 30 Skinks and the Star Priest, which that's amazing list as well. That's something that I've ran and I've tried. I, again, just love the Skinks for multiple reasons. So dealing with characters like Gotrek, or when you need to do death by 1,000 cuts, they're great at that. They're 30 wounds with -1 damage, so things that do a lot of 2 attack, like 2 damage, 3 damage. Having 30 wounds, if I lose like 7 or 8 or 9, whatever, it's not the end of the day, because -1 damage is so amazing. But one shout out, I guess, is the Moonstone clubs. So all of AOS 2, not everyone, but many people ran the shields. So there was more of a reason to run the shields because they gave you +1 to your save. Now, because you can't get any more than +1, as we've mentioned, you can only ever get to a 5-up. So you can negate some of the rend by using one of the billion ways to get +1 save in this book, whether it be the Skink Priest ability, the Star Seer spell, Mystic Shield, all at defense. You know what I mean? There's countless ways to get +1 save. You're not able to get more than that. So that's, in this edition, even more so. The Moonstone clubs are amazing in combat, and I used to run them in AOS 2 as well. Not a lot of people did, and I never understood it, because in combat they go from 5s and 5s to 4s and 4s. So you give them the Herald of the Old Ones +1 to hit, so you're pretty much always going to be 4s and 5s in shooting, and then 3s and 4s in combat, with 6s doing additional mortal, and as well hopefully going to have Hand of Glory. So in combat they're 3s rerolling 1s, 4s with 6s doing an additional mortal on 60 attack, or however many attacks you can get in.
And I was going to say, because you get the +1 attack as well, because you're above 15 and you've got so many bodies. And if you're worried about it, you can always rally? You could always rally and try to get back a whole bunch of skinks if you are suffering significant damage.
If you're outside of 3, if you're not near enemies, then you definitely can. But even more so, I was going to say too, and that's one of the other reasons why you have the Stegadon with Skink Chief, is he gives +1 to attacks to melee to a Skink unit. So if that Skink unit is charged in, he's going to do even more damage. Well, I don't know. They both do an insane amount of damage, but giving +1 attacks to a unit that has, say, 22 Skinks in combat that are actually all hitting, that's 66 attacks instead of 44. So it's, just being able to add that as well. And it's 24 inch. So it's like the range on the Stegadon's command ability is crazy big too. So multiple reasons why I love Skinks. I'm a Star Boy at heart. I love playing Thunder Lizards, and I have been playing them quite a bit lately. And I'm still on the fence of bringing them to some of the big tournaments. I don't know. I just love all of it so much. But yeah, the Skinks are just great. They're still just so good.
One change we didn't talk about early on in the video that might be worth calling out now while you have a sip of your drink is the board obviously changed as well. The board has shrunk significantly. And one thing that I've learned very quickly in third ed is that the aura buffs now are way more generous. Like, you look at how an 18-inch kind of buff around a model really impacts the board. And, when you look at 24-inch circumference around, that Engine of the Gods or whatever it might be, that is incredibly generous. You can cover a fair amount of the board. So you don't have to worry about bubble wrapping and keeping within these small pockets. You really don't have to stretch out as much as you used to. There's way less objectives you need to go for. Claiming all of the objectives isn't nearly as important as it used to be, which means that, getting off within these buffs can be a lot easier than it used to be. So,
yep. 100%. And those 24-inch, you're absolutely right. If that Staggy's anywhere near the middle of the board, it's like the old Vermin Lord Warp Seer, baby. No rat is running ever again in his life. 26-inch, from his giant base. It's, I hate to bring up Skaven again, but yeah, those big aura buffs are, unbelievable. So I don't know if you wanted me to go on just with the rest of it. So
that's great. That's great, because I know some people were talking about the shields and just the way you're loading out the Skinks, and
it's still, and the shields are still viable. So you're not always going to have Mystic Shield and all these other buffs as well. So you can still use them if you're going to use them just for shooting. But I'm putting those Skinks in combat, especially like we just said, with the +1 attacks from everything. Like they can do a lot of work. Now, one thing shout quickly is they don't have rend. So if you're playing against Blood Knights or Archaon or the new Stormcast, which is the last game Jordan and I just played, just for like a casual game, you don't want them to go into 2-up save. The mortals are going to be good. You're going to do, say, 6, 7, 8 mortals if you have enough of them in. So that's still amazing. But it's like the old Mortec Guard situation. You don't want to put low rend into them, because 2-up save or a 4-up rerolling save, you're not doing a ton of damage. So you want to, like with the Stegadon or the Carnosaur, you want to find those other units. So if you're playing Archaon, kill everything else that doesn't have a 2-up save. You know what I mean? You really need to strategically pick what you're going to go into combat with and what you're going to attack. Maybe hit the Vindictors that are a 3-up instead of the new 2-up crazy giant dudes with the shields. But
I will make one argument for the shields, and it's not a pro versus con, but it's one consideration. And I see that you don't have Hunters of the Heartland, which means that a monster can certainly roar on you and stop you from receiving a command in the combat phase. So if you are facing Rend and you aren't able to apply all-out defense, your skinks might fall to a stiff breeze. So by having shields, and if this is important to you, this might be consideration. I think you're building towards offensive power, which is smart. I'm finding the same thing with my Witch Elves. They've got like a 6-up save. If I have a shield, they're on a 5. There's already +1s in my army. I can only ever get a maximum of +1. How much am I worried about that? And, what's the return on my investment? And I think I'm finding, at least in my sisters, double blades are nearly better than the blade and shield because I'm just getting more value.
It's the exact same. So 6-up save base, and then you go to a 5-up. And another argument, like I was saying before, is that your sisters don't have -1 damage. So if you're getting hit by like Arcad or anything with 2 damage or 3 damage, that -1 damage, even on a 6-up, is because really a 6-up, I don't care. They're dying. They're gonna die anyways. So even if most things have Ren 2 or even Ren 1, I'm not having it. I'm not going to save anyways. So I'm just relying on the amount of wounds that are there, and hopefully that -1 damage is going to, well, it will reduce however many that go through. But they also, you do need to be careful though, even with Dracothians and Fangs. Good players will shoot them, and good players will know that they have a 6-up save, so they're going to, from range, or they're going to target that unit because they know that that's one that is a glass cannon unit that can do a lot of damage. So yeah, it's one of those things, like you said, like you either take it for the offensive piece, or I wouldn't even take them at all, and I would take Salamanders or another Stegadon and go the other route with your list.
Yeah, I think still having bodies, like if you play a Sun's army, for example, not having that 30 unit of Skinks means that you won't be able to score any objectives. Like if you play Suns with this, like that 30 block is keeping you from scoring. Yeah. Like otherwise, like if I'm a Suns player, I've just got to stand on some objectives and good luck reclaiming them off me.
No way. Is that what they do?
But you know what I mean? Like at least with the 30, you can body block me and you can deny me from getting around an objective.
Yep. And I think now with redeploy and all the different shenanigans, this AOS 3 is so fun. It's so amazing it's not, like we were saying before, it's not as bad where you can just keep like a couple models and then keep RK on from taking the point because you have 2 skinks like sitting there. It's still very much a tactical game, and very much the person who positions well and knows what's happening and is able to take the objective is probably going to be the one that wins.
You've got more opportunity to respond as well. You've got ways to bring back models through. We talked earlier about rally. Being able to be interactive with your opponent, and I think that's probably where having tools in your toolkit, having the speed in your army with things like Skinks allows you to do some really cool redeploys. Having really high leadership allows you to ignore the fact that you can only do one inspiring presence, but as well as doing heroic action healing as well. There's way more tools. Having a lot of priests allows you to really reduce the amount of endless spells on the table or maximize your own. Like there's so many ways to be interactive. I'm finding I'm not nearly sitting idle playing with my phone that I might have played in 3rd edition where, my opponent might have even double turned me. So it could be 45 minutes before I actually get to do something that I want to other than an armor save.
Yeah, 100% agree. So much better. The game is so fun. And it's just saying with the bravery thing, and that's, like I said, I play a lot of like Starborn, so 10 bravery is just so good right now. Even just like techless or just other things that just, if you have low bravery, you're screwed, or you fight Feck and they do way more mortals to you. In this situation, because Salamanders have 5 bravery, which a lot of people don't know. So it's something that you never want to tell your opponent when you have a 1 Salamander with 3 little skink handlers. If you kill 2 of those skink handlers or 3 of the skink handlers, that Salamander's running away on a 3+, 120 point unit. So that's one of the reasons you can't run. And one of the reasons that I run the 5 chameleon skinks instead of 1 Salamander is for that reason alone, because I can only use inspiring presence on 1 unit. So if I lose, say, 10 skinks and they have 5 bravery, and I lose 2 of the handlers from the Salamander, if I'm playing a smart player that knows that, I can only inspiring presence 1, and then that Salamander could possibly be gone, And another shout too, just when you said rally, that makes me think of just a funny interaction I had the other day. I've done it twice now. Is I've had a 2-pack of salamanders down to 1 salamander. So I lost the 6 handlers and the salamander. So I got 7 dice on the rally, and I rolled a 6. So I brought back a full salamander instead of because you get dice for the skink handlers as well. So it feels so good when you can bring back a salamander, and then those 2 go off and murk something. It's a cool interaction.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, and it just shows you like what you can do just like tactically, and it does give you a lot of utility. You got the Saurus warriors in your list, I imagine, to be supporting your Slan, your Star Master. Yeah,
the guard.
The guard. Sorry, yeah.
They're there just to pass off wounds for and also this one of the downsides to this list, and I've played it a bunch now and kind of seen, not a full downside because you can usually deploy well with the Realmshaper engine, is you need units to somewhat screen some things. So you want to screen your skinks because you don't want them to be getting into some of the bigger dinos. You using them to zone, and where else are you going to put them? They're giant triceratops. So the 5 guard for me, I've been finding have actually been more of a screen, but also behind near the temple, and also staying within 3 of the sword or the slam, just in case something shoots him, or it's all dependent. That's where your generalship comes into play. Like if you're playing Marathian the Bow Snakes, or you're playing depending, or a full combat army, you're going to play a completely different deployment and put your pieces in different places. So the Source Guard are pretty much there for that, and they also fill the 3rd battle line. So it was like either you could use, say, Source Knights, but then if you really want to keep your Slan, you don't have a ablative 10 wounds for them. So that's kind of their role, bit of a screen and also just more wounds. And then you got to have at least 1 more Stegadon. So that's the 3rd battle line. And the Stegadons by themselves are different for people that are playing them. They're not heroes, obviously, so you need to be wary of where they are. So you want to keep them wholly within 12 of your engine or other things, just so that if you need to use all attack or all defense or anything like that, that you're able to still do that. Like the other day, I shot one down the side, and that was about 14 inches away, so I wasn't able to use command abilities on it. And it's something small, but you don't think about it because it's like a dinosaur. You're like, oh yeah, it'll be fine over there. But you still need to somewhat babysit them with heroes because you can't use command abilities obviously on them. So,
quick question and quick thought. I'll go with the thought first.
Yeah.
Would you consider putting, say, the Stegadon and the Bastiladon into the Alpha Beast pack, which is obviously one of the 2 GUR battle packs right now? The battalion, so it's not going to last forever, but that rewards you. Would you consider doing that?
Yeah, is that the one that gives you D6 or
the D6 move? Yeah. Sorry, is it 6 inch or D6? Whatever it is, like it's a free pre-game move.
I think I could see that with the Bastiladon possibly, but again, with the Skink Priest, you can. It's on a 3+, so getting run, shoot, run, charge. If you're going to give that to Bastiladon, maybe not, because I don't know. It's definitely a utility that you can use, but your Bastiladon shoots 24 inches. Both of your dinosaurs shoot 24 inches. They both move. Well, the Bastiladon moves 5, and the Staggy moves 8. So that's 32-inch threat range on the Staggy. So you're probably fine there, and then 29 on the Bastiladon. So I don't know. In my head, I'm like, I would rather be 4-drop and then risk being able to give away the turn. It could be in some lists you might, because people can ask you how far your threat range is and then deploy there. But yeah, I don't know. It could definitely work in some scenarios.
I think the other consideration, it was more of a trick question. I just wanted to get your thoughts. I'm not saying it's good or bad, but I think the other consideration is that there's a lot of battle tactics that don't mean that you need to get into combat first turn. And I'm finding with some of the armies that I'm playing that, charging you turn 1 is not the most appropriate way. I'm holding off till turn 2, turn 3 to do the thing.
Yep.
So like that pre-game move, I don't quite need it unless I'm trying to screen, but then I don't want to screen with dinosaurs. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like for me, I think you've gone down the right route with the battle regiment or warlord, and get the extra artifact or hunters. So, but yeah, obviously season to taste.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, hunters is awesome, and it feels so good when you have hunters and someone charges the Archaon in or something, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna roar that, and it's like, actually, no, you're not gonna. But yeah, it's awesome. Can also
and then the other
yeah.
And then the other question was going to be around, where do you find is a good place to put that Realmshaper engine other than 3 inches from the objective? Like, do you have a plan or thoughts or a strategy that you keep in mind? Obviously, every table is different, every opponent's different, but what are those considerations for someone who's looking to learn from you?
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but yeah, this is one of my favorite changes because, like I said, in that Grand Clash, like 100-person tournament, going there, wanting to do well, have a really strong list, ready to go. Game 1, my opponent rolls a 6. I don't get my Realmshaper engine. I get Warp Lightning Vortex and shot up from Zilfin. You know what I mean? Like, that whole scenario wouldn't have happened had I just had my Realmshaper engine. So that change alone, I don't even care if it does nothing. If I can just have that in my deployment, because it's garrisonable, you're not able to land on it, is so good. So, putting Kroak or putting your slam beside it, that means that nothing can charge it and land on that side. So it's just like another wall of like nothing can go there. But the Realmshaper is also just so good. Like, it does mortal wounds to everything within 3 inches of a piece of terrain which you pick from the Realmshaper, if you have a Skink, Wizard, or Priest inside of it. So if it's within 18 inches of your Realmshaper, the terrain piece, then it's on a 2+. If it's within 8 or from 18 to 36 inches, it's on a 4+. And then it's never going to be outside of 36 inches on the small boards. So, you're generally going to be doing it the middle one. So 4+, everything within 3 inches is taking D3 mortal wounds, which, don't forget that, kids. If I can tell you anything, that's one that has got a few wounds on things that you pair with Comet and you pair with Chameleons, or you do those types of things. You'll be happy when you get 3 mortal wounds onto something.
Because I know a lot of Seraphon players in 2E were very similar to OBR players, where they would, because you didn't know which side of the board you were going to be on, because you put the terrain piece in the, most people put it in the middle because they're like, look, I don't want you to gain it. I really want it, but to play neutrally, I'll either put it to the side or I'll put it in the center. I know that was kind of how people were thinking, but obviously some of that's now changed. So you can be a bit more aggressive.
The good players were doing something different than that. So in AOS 2, what you would do is you would roll all your arcane where all the terrain was, and then you would pick the side that you didn't want to take. So it was a lot of the time it was replace a piece of terrain. So if you saw a piece of arcane, like or commanding or something that you wanted, you would replace the other side with your Realmshaper, so that if you didn't get to pick, your opponent would have to pick between taking the arcane or taking your Realmshaper, and 9 times out of 10 they're taking the Realmshaper, and then you have another +1 to cast.
I like it. I like that.
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah.
That's some secret list tech. I like that. And I know Brendan was asking about allies, and while the Knight of Xeros is a great reroll engine, I wouldn't get too excited, because we do obviously have a Stormcast Battle Tome coming very soon. We don't know when, but I've been saying to a lot of people, like, just hold off with the Knight of Xeros. I feel like if you don't already own one, I wouldn't buy it just yet. It's like it's asking for a War Scroll change, and maybe it'll be a +1, because they seem to be getting away a lot of rerolls, like they're clearing them out of the game. So
yeah,
if you own one, awesome, play it.
I have my friend Oliver's Knight of Xeros, like from our Season War team, and Oliver, I don't know if you're going to get the Xeros back, but if the War Scroll changes, I'll definitely give him back. But I'm really, really hoping, like, a lot of my lists, especially thinking about these Stegadons, like, and Bastiladon, that many Stegadon shooting with 3s to hit, like, reroll 1s is just unbelievably good. So the Knight of Xeros is one piece that, if anyone watches Season of War, like, I've in a couple of my latest battle reports, I've been using them, and I cleared out 20 Sisters of Slaughter in the other game with just the Stegadon's melee attacks, and not like a crazy amount, but still 3s and 3s is so swingy. Even 2s and 3s, super swingy. You get reroll 1s to hit in this edition. It's so good. But like you said, I've a strong feeling that he's going to lose his ability.
It's likely, I'm guessing it's going to be like a +1, but it is a good ally choice. And if it stays as a reroll, awesome, great ally choice for anyone, not just of Seraphon, but anyone who can ally Stormcast in. Is there any other options? I know you talked about the Frosty Bird, the Frost Phoenix could be possibly a good ally. Any other considerations that you've played around with or thoughts?
Yeah, there's been a bunch. I immediately, when the new book came out, because we used to be able to ally Sylvaneth, as soon as that came out, I immediately started looking at Cities of Sigmar units and Stormcast, because those are obviously where you're going to be getting them. The Frostheart Phoenix was always, I always just wanted to convert one and put a bunch of cool like Aztec-y parts on the Phoenix, and then the Troglodon Skink Chief that is on the top fits like absolutely perfect. So I'm actually, that he's on my painting table right now. Like I'm doing up the Phoenix. Early testing, I've played 4 or 5 games with him, and it does what you think it does. The the 4-up ward save is just unbelievable. Obviously, that's what you're taking the Phoenix for. Yeah, I don't know if you're going to say anything with that, but
I was going to laugh because I was going to mention, this is exactly what I was going to mention, because I've been playing around with it. Darlena, the daughter and father witch hunting combo, that little crossbow, being able to snipe out wizards, especially wizards or endless spells at range when it doesn't move. I think at 115 points, I think it is an incredible ally choice. I wouldn't take Dad, but daughter is definitely a cracking ally and not a lot of points investment.
Carl has that from the channel, like from Season of War, like on our.
And people should be watching Season of War, by the way. Like, go check them out. They not only do some of the most competitive battle reports for Sigma, but also you guys are just great, and you have a lot of wonderful list variety. So go check them out. Definitely recommend that.
Yeah, thanks, man. We really try to concentrate on strategy and going through our turns and saying kind of what we're doing, but as well, we're also very competitive players. So, we all live near Toronto here. We're all over the tournament scene. Like we're going down to Du Bois. We're possibly going to Texas. We're going to LVO. Like, love tournaments, and that's what we just really want to play competitively. So if you haven't heard of Season of War, definitely check it out.
And Little Marathi is saying that you've got a great narrator, the best narrator. So
that is Jordan's wife, Cass, and you are absolutely right. She is unbelievably good. So I think she did some voice acting or some type of voice work before. And Little Marathi, if you didn't know, she actually does the backup vocals for some of the background music. So like some of the elven-y like music you get in the back, that's actually Cass. She's a really good singer as well. So she's super talented. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I've just learned something. All right, Marcella.
Yeah.
And if people want to learn about Daughters of Cain, Marcella just did an awesome show with me, like only recently. But this is not the Daughters show. Despite me talking like multiple times about my reference points of Daughters, this is the Seraphon show. But there's a couple of really good allies. I think the challenge that I'm finding with allies in third edition at the moment is that there are points went up. So I'm not nearly getting as many things into my list that I would have in second edition. And to then sacrifice something to bring in an ally, it really needs to supercharge my army, and most of the time it doesn't, because those generic order destruction kind of abilities are being removed. But then too, they've got to really fill that niche and that requirement for my force. So I'm struggling, and I know I've been playing with a Frostheart Phoenix in my daughter's army because it's self-contained, but outside of that, maybe a Hurricanum for the Lumen, like a Hurricanum for the mortal wounds. But are you better off putting those 300 points into something that is native in your force? And I don't think you have a problem with mortal wounds, for example. Just like think about what the gap is.
Yeah, the Hurricanum's great, but it's for cities. Like, you're not getting the buffs from it. The Phoenix, I guess we kind of half-assed. The Phoenix, it works great. It's an amazing pinning piece. You know what I mean? It moves 16. It has 8 attacks at 2 damage. In cities, it's awesome because you can give it flaming weapon. But even in Seraphon, it's just very survivable. You're going to be casting spells, so you're going to be having it at that +1 save. You're obviously heroic actions. The Slan has a spell to heal D3 on a 10+, or heal 1 wound. So there's a lot of ways to heal him up as well. But some of the other
Frost or fire?
I go Frost, but the fire just because of the movement thing. So if it was still, you can't run or retreat or do any of those things and do the mortal wounds. So it's only that normal move. So I've seen like Simon Hall obviously is the guru of cities, and I always watch. I love his bat reps; they're super quick and awesome. But he talks about a lot of different tech, and in Tempest Eye, if you get +3 move, or there's other ways to do it in cities, but you can't do it really in Seraphon. But he fills a void that we don't really have, which is a big monster that is survivable. He just all the time isn't able to get broken ranks or make sure he finishes something off. He can for sure at sometimes, but we still do have other staggies and things, but everything's -1 rend. So it's like, I don't know, it's all questionable. But allies, I wanted to say one other one, like I bought a battle mage actually, because I guess you don't really need more of the +2 run in charge. Like Wild Form is a great spell, so I bought it right away just because when I saw the allies, I'm like, oh, Wild Form. I used to like that spell's awesome. But now it's like you have the Stars here for 3d6 charge, and do you really need the Wild Form? I don't know.
I literally did this last night. I literally looked at the Battle Mage again, and I looked at the Gur Battle Mage, and I'm like, do I really need this +2 to run and charge? Because my daughters can run and charge, which is great, so I get +2 on both, and Cogs is obviously changed, so I can't get the +2 board wide. But I think for me, again, it was just like, no, I don't quite need it.
Yeah, there's a local shop near where I live, and they do a lot of used models. So I'm always on there just looking at old ones. So as soon as that came up, I just looked at all the cities models I could get, and there was and apparently I found out from someone that it's actually the Battle Mage from the Hurricanum kit, the guy that's on top. And I was like, oh, this would look cool. I'll just put a skink head or a lizard head on him, and this will be my Battle Mage. So I don't know. I have it, so I might build it. And this just goes back to the cool thing is that we have a channel that I love just painting up and putting on random lists or different models. So it's fun to just try stuff out. So, I'll maybe go back to them. Drake, there's a few other like Drake Spawn Knights, anything with a 3-up save too, like, cause we don't really have things that have 3-up saves. So looking at, I'm not Drake Spawn, the
Demigriff Knights.
Yeah. So like even them, it's like ally and a couple of them. I don't know. That's all just cute stuff that, Seraphon probably have better units that you can be taking, but again,
I think I'd just rather a Steggy. Like I'd rather a Steggy or a Troglodon over like allied Demigriffs.
It's just fun flavor, like just trying to find some cool stuff to bring into your list. But yeah, we didn't even talk about Gotrek, but yeah, he's obviously the big ally that you're going to be seeing and bringing in. But yeah, I guess we don't even really need to talk about him. Everyone knows.
I was going to say high level. Do you think it's worth considering? And by the way, like the #1 ally, if I can do it, will be the dragon. Like if I can get this Stormcast dragon, I don't know what it does, but I want it in my list. But with Gotrek, do you think your type of army, because it's 400 odd points, like it's an expensive addition to a force.
Yeah.
Is it a trap? Is it filling a void that you're missing? Do you need it?
I think I have him. I think he's amazing. There are very many ways to avoid him, and in certain battle plans, if you don't play him properly, you can, like I've played against Gotreks a lot where my opponent will deploy him in the corner, or not in the corner, sorry, on one side, or like in a position where he's not just right down the gut in the middle, and I will just put my entire army over on the other side and cap everything else. So, you see tons of videos of people, ways to avoid Gotrek and blah, 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 all of this type of stuff like that. It is definitely something you will see, and like lists like buckets, like the First Prince, like if you can half his charge and redeploy, like he's not going to get near you. So there are a lot of like different ways to avoid him as well. But if you play him right and you run him auto 6 down the middle, and then you get turn and you charge him in, he will mess your shit up. Like he is no joke. Like it's just insane what that little guy can do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cool other options, right? You could go in, as Autumn's talking about, some of the cities models, even like the Anointed on foot, whether it's the Warden King, the other one that has an unbind. There's a lot of cool things you can do, but I think one of the other cool additions is that priest can now unbind as well. So to stop you from removing endless spells, you could use a priest to do that and keep your wizards to cast or to generate CP and all that good stuff.
I really like that. I'm actually gonna look. I didn't even think about Longbeards. How many points are they for 10? Like if they're, there might be worth some type of short screen. Oh, there's Zach, my buddy. Ridge Page, my hero.
I think you've got the armies that have the deepest roster for allies. Stormcast, after the new battle tome, will probably be sitting at the 80 to 90 mark. You'll have Cities of Sigmar, which is sitting in the 70 to 80 mark somewhere. So between the two, you've got a lot of cool options. But I think the challenge is, one, where do you get the points from? Two, what's the role you need filled? Do you need a fast flying wizard? Maybe it's the Freeguild General, not the Freeguild General, the Battle Mage on Griffin. If you need some type of wizard sniper, maybe it's Doralina, or are you just better off keeping? I think this is we'll be here forever going through allies.
Yeah, I do like that one, and Carl has used it against me because that sniping wizards, against Seraphon is great, and I think with Comet and with camos, those long range mortals or the long range damage, that could definitely be something to look into. But I think more it's going to be this new Stormcast book. It's like when these things come out, it's if they're your ally, it's almost like a release for you too, right? You're going to find a couple of those units that work well into your army, and maybe it's a giant dragon, or maybe it's some whatever a unit that maybe didn't have the same rules as now it's going to have in the new book. And I have a feeling that this new Stormcast is going to be good. So we'll see. It's the first two armies in the AOS release. I just have a feeling Stormcast have historically not been the best, but I don't know. I got a feeling they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, Evocators were hot when they first come out, and they kind of eventually got changed, but who knows? But I think Seraphon, coming back to Seraphon, because this is the book, I think you're generally in a really good spot. I think my overall analysis of Seraphon right now is whether you go Starborn, whether you go Coalesced, whether you want to go a Dino route or a traditional Skink Slan route, you have good options. I think some things have changed for the better, some things have changed for the worse. My advice to everyone is always forget your second edition list, start afresh in third and build around third, because the battle tactics, the grand strategies, the way you interact, and you don't have to, like very early on, I was building lists that had a lot of screens and a lot of like multiple small units to go handle objectives. But one, I'm not dealing with, 8 objectives like Scorched Earth. 2, I don't have to cap and do all these retaining that I used to have to. It's more about controlling more than my opponent, which often is can be 2.
2, yeah, 3. Exactly.
So having more bubbles, having more buffed up, forces that can go off the 2 objectives is often enough.
Yeah, I think it comes down to if you're looking at Seraphon from a high level, it depends on what you want out of them. If you want to have fun and you play casually with your friends, definitely just play whatever you want. You can play Kodos Claw can be competitive. Like Kodos Claw in AOS 2 were doing really well. Like James B. There's a lot of guys on TTS 2 that played Kodos Claw that ran the Knights and ran everything, and they were so good. In 3, they're probably the only army that I would say is not as competitive as Dracos, Fangs, and Thunder Lizards. So if you want to play competitively, I would say either if you want to go with Thunder Lizards, then you're going to go Steggies and Basildons. If you want to go, you can either go Fangs or Dracos. They're both going to be really good in this edition.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that, that's probably how I would order it. I think most of it is still pretty good. And I think James B's in the chat, he's saying it is still good for me. So there you go. A smart player will make it work. We've seen it in the competitive scene. People are still winning or top 10ing with armies that people rubbished off. So I wouldn't put my toys away just yet. Go test, learn, play, find the hidden jank and the combos and the synergies, and we all learn together, which will lead me to, if you are playing Seraphon and this list, and I'll show the list again, but Ridge has been an awesome guest. But if your list looks very different to this list and you're like, I really love X, I prefer Y, I want to know. Let me know in the comment section. Tell me what you're building around and why. Because I think as the meta evolves, as tournaments start settling into the different battle plans, and maybe even, and then one of the things I'm testing as well is the long game. I'm in lockdown. I'm in week 11. I'm not going to a tournament anytime soon. So I'm imagining in a world of 2022 when I can finally play, snakes might be nerfed in the eyes of Marathi. So I'm going along with Witch Elves that test, play, see what things do in 3rd edition, and you might be surprised with some of the good stuff and the bad stuff.
You couldn't have picked a better book if you want to jump in and start an army. You can't pick a better army than Seraphon to play, whatever you want to play. Like I said in my tweet earlier, I'm like, prove me wrong. This is the best book for variance and for competitiveness, for just overall being able to play anything. And James, I'm going to message you after. I'm curious to hear the Kodos Claw, but I do think Kodos can still probably be competitive. It's just, Knights losing not having 10 anymore, running maybe MSU Knights. I don't know. I'm curious, but yeah, everything's great.
Ridge, if people want to chat to you, I have a feeling I know the answer to this, but if people want to learn more, one, you've obviously got Season of War. So if you want to see Ridge put this theory into practice, there's plenty of battle reports, and they're obviously doing many more, both publicly on YouTube as well as they put out extras on their Patreon. But if people want to chat to you, you've got Twitter. They're cool to message you and chat and obviously all that good stuff.
100%. So yeah, it's just Ridge of Sigmar. So Ridge_of_Sigmar is my Twitter handle. And then I don't even know what my Discord is, but I talk to a lot of guys on Discord as well, because that's where we meet to play TTS, obviously, and a lot of the tournaments before. But yeah, message me anything at any time. I always love talking about Seraphon. I've messaged a bunch of random people like Basil, and I know James B. Like, there's a lot of guys that I've just played or seen in TTS that I'll just be like, hey man, like, what's up? What do you think about this? And then we just start talking about Seraphon, and there's nothing better than that. So for sure.
I think that's been the exciting part as well, and it's probably what's kept me sane during lockdown, is communities like Discord, like Facebook pages, and wherever you want to, WhatsApps or whatever it is. People know I've got a Discord link below. Join it, come join us. But like being able to go, right, this is my list, pick it apart. And, I've got a great community who I've been sharing my daughter's list going, doesn't work the way you're thinking. Oh, I like how you've done that. Have you thought about going from Temple A to Temple B? And it's been great to kind of pool our resources and learn together. And I think when these tournaments start picking back up wherever you might be, you're going to be better off because you've had a great community. So whether it is the Seraphon Facebook page or Lustria online, or whether it's, my Discord or wherever it might be, I'd highly recommend, sharing thoughts. We're all learning together, and which is why I'm saying leave comments in the comment section, because I want to hear from you, and all the other Seraphon players would love to kind of like formulate some ideas.
Big time.
Cool. All right. Well, it's lunchtime for me. Ridge, you have been an absolute legend. Thank you for joining. I've learned plenty. I hope you've been enjoying your beers. I love the Lustria background, all your prizes of the old ones. Go check out Seasons of War. They are an absolute bloody legends. Man, I need to buy that. I love Kroak.
Yeah.
I love Kroak. I love Kroak. All right, we're off. Have a good one. Peace.
See you later, everyone.
Thanks for sticking around until the end. I hope you found that video interesting and you walked away with a few new ideas. If you did, I would appreciate it if you hit like on the video, as well as left me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. The conversation will continue over on Discord, so links down below in the episode description if you want to join the Discord and continue the Age of Sigmar conversation. I want to give a massive shout out as well to these absolute bloody legends, these champions who have continued to support me through Patreon or YouTube members. That is going directly into supporting the maintenance and the growth of this channel. So thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated. And until next time, roll more sixes.